If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you but make allowances for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings, and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose, and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your long turn after they're gone, and so hold on when there's nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. That was Rudyard Kipling's poem, If, Advice to a Son, written in 1895, and it was voted the United Kingdom's favourite poem in a poll for the BBC in 1995. And there's plenty for us to worry about at the moment. We worry about our world. We worry about our country. We worry about our communities, our friends. We worry about our families. We worry about our health, our finances, our future. There's plenty to worry about. And that worry is often a major driver in how we act. It drives our behavior, how we relate to those around us, what we prioritize, what we choose to do with that time that's allotted to us in this life. In that famous passage in the Bible of Jesus stilling the storm, the disciples are all running around saying, help, help, help. They're out in the boat, the storm's raging, and Jesus is actually asleep in the boat. He's actually asleep. While all around them lost their heads to the storm that was raging around them. And, you know, we have plenty of storms raging around us at the moment. And, you know, as is my wont, last week I find myself worrying about what if, how, when, will, where, maybe, and all the other things that are raging around in my head. And really I saw how caught up I was in all of that. And it struck me that there was only really one way to deal with the journey of life. And that's one step at a time. We have to deal with what's right in front of us and not try and solve the future before it's even come, or the past, which we can do nothing about. And, you know, when I was doing that, you know, I go through these little processes sadly in my life, I found myself, you know, letting go. And there was a peace that I could drop into. A peace that right now, everything's okay. My body felt okay. My surroundings felt okay. That, in fact, at that moment, everything was pretty okay. I saw that all I really had to address was what's right in front of me at that present moment. And then deal with whatever came next. Not worrying about it before it came, but dealing with it as and when it arrived. It's so simple. And we often talk about, being in the present moment. But in the overwhelming swirl of everything that happens in life, it's so easy to forget it. To be in the moment. If we want to do that, one of the first things we have to realize is that we're not in control. That, as Oren Ryan's quoted, and I mentioned this last week, power is not manifested in the human being. True power is in the Creator, in the source, in the ultimate being. And, we forget that too. We think that it's down to us to save the planet, to protect our country, to rescue our communities, to make everything right with our friends, with our family, and to put our lives onto the right track. We have to do all of that. But it isn't really up to us. Yes, we have to act when the moment arises for us to act. But ultimately, it's simple to realize that we're not in control and that there is an order infinitely greater than ourselves with its own checks and balances. So it's not our job to worry. It's our job to be sensitive to really what's going on in the moment that we're in and act out of that rather than act out of worry. If you can keep your head when all around you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you but make allowances for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired of waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet not look too good or talk too wise. There's a humility in dealing with things one step at a time. And it's really the only way to be completely connected to reality. Because all reality really is in the present moment. I've used this poem before, but, Thich Nhat Hanh's poem, Our True Home, is in the present moment. It's such a great thought. Our true home, where we live, where our heart is in the present moment. To live in the present moment's a miracle. This is Thich Nhat Hanh. The miracle is not to walk on water. The miracle is to walk on the green earth in the present moment, to appreciate the peace and beauty that's available to us right now. Peace is all around us in the world and in nature and within us. It's in our bodies and in our spirits. Once we learn to touch this peace, we will be healed and transformed. It's not a matter of faith. It is a matter of practice. We need only to find ways to bring our body and mind back into the present moment so we can touch what is refreshing, healing, and wondrous. Lovely set of words from Thich Nhat Hanh. And that is the way to live, even in troubled times. And yet we get so distracted, by what we see on TV, by what we hear on podcasts, and what our friends and family are telling us, or what we see and hear others doing. And once distracted, we just come out of the present moment. I think much of the distraction is about a fear of death. It's the ultimate fear because no one knows what happens after you die. But I'm not just talking about ultimate death, but the little deaths too. the fear of loss of health. We just don't know what's going to happen, so we fear. It's like a death. We fear it in that way. We fear about the loss of our wealth. We fear about the loss of friends and family members. We fear about the loss of community. We fear about the loss of our country, the loss of our world. You know, it's all about that fear of it dying. We fear the death that comes in the next moment of not knowing. We fear the death that comes in the next moment of not knowing. We want to know. And so we worry about how to know. And the worrying begins there. Marcus Aurelius says in his Meditations, "You're much mistaken, my friend, if you think that any man worth his salt cares about the risk of death and doesn't concentrate on this alone, whether what he's doing is right or wrong, and his behavior a good man's or a bad man's behavior." As Heather said last week, we have a unique part to play, and those decisions in the moment without fear of death are what matters. The decisions that make our behavior good or bad. Marcus Aurelius says again, "It's like this, gentlemen of the jury. The spot where a person decides to station himself, or wherever his commanding officer stations him, that's where he ought to take his stand and face the enemy, and not worry about being killed or about anything but doing his duty." And really, that's our job, to be in the place where we're stationed. And for all of us, that's the present moment. Our job is to be there and to sense, and this is the only place where you can sense it, to sense what is being asked of us in that moment, and then do what is being asked of us on behalf of life, not thinking about what's next. As the Tao Te Ching says, "Fill your bowl to the brim and it will spill. Keep sharpening your knife and it will blunt. Chase after money and security and your heart will never unclench. Care about people's approval and you will be their prisoner. Do your work, then step back. The only path to serenity." And that's really it. You've got to be sensing what's being asked of you, and you do it, and then you step back. It's the only path to serenity. The only path where we can fill our obligations to the life that bore us. That's how you do that. Serenity, from the Latin word serenus, which means clear. Fine and calm, but clear. Which, of course, takes us back to the Tao Te Ching. Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving till right action arises by itself? We do not serve life by our worrying, by rushing around trying to find solutions to problems that our mind has given us. We serve life by being in the flow of life, so that life can speak to us and prompt us into right action. And we will never hear the promptings of life if that still small voice, which is how life prompts us, if that still small voice is drowned out by constant worry created by the loud voice of our minds. So when we find ourselves worrying or with palpitations or the sweats or lack of a solution, and that can lead to depression and desperation, we have to stop and bring ourselves back into the present moment, to feel our bodies, to slow down and to look around. What is our situation right now? What's to be done right now, if anything? And to breathe, to be back in our breath in the present moment. It's a great thing when you find yourself worrying, just to breathe and let it go, come back to your breath. And with our breath comes that still small voice that brings serenity. There will be a time to act. And when that time comes, we will know it. But we can trust in the flow of life. We can trust where it takes us. But only if we've committed ourselves to being in that flow of life by being in the present moment. By consciously being in that flow, we become peaceful and sensitive to what needs to be done. We're connecting. When we're in the present moment, we're connecting to that which is essential. The essential in us is connecting to the essential in the universe. And that gives us access to the wisdom of the universe. That's how we get our wisdom, is by connecting to the present moment and allowing ourselves to be in that flow. And then the wisdom just naturally comes. It's in that connection, made by being present, fully present in the moment, that our path is revealed to us. And that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for our path. And, no worrying is going to take us to it. But once we're in our path, then we're able to make that ultimate commitment. We make a commitment knowing that we are in the right place. And it's a commitment that is almost beyond death, the death of worrying about what's going to happen, and even our own physical death, because we know we're in the right moment. And we don't worry about it, because we're committed to that. The Tao Te Ching says again, the master has no mind of her own. She works with the mind of the people. She's good to people who are good. She's also good to people who aren't good. This is true goodness. She trusts people who are trustworthy. She also trusts people who aren't trustworthy. This is true trust. The master's mind is like space. People don't understand her, but they look to her and wait. She treats them like her own children. It's a shame Ellen lives in Paonia, because if she didn't, we'd have her here every week. So that was wonderful. Thank you, Ellen, for being so sensitive. And listen, just have an opportunity now for anybody who wants to communicate and just join in the conversation any way you want to. If you're watching online, then there's a text number there. You can just text in and you can say something or ask a question or make a contribution any way that you want. So Heather's got a microphone. Would anybody like to add to the conversation? Yes, Camille.
I'll always take an opportunity with a microphone. Thank you for a beautiful sermon. And my only question of the morning is, what did the German Jews feel like when they stayed in the present moment and Hitler was hypnotizing them?
Yeah. History is a difficult thing, isn't it? I mean, the interesting thing is when we take it back to the personal, it really is, any particular time, when we're in meditation, it's quite easy to sort of be there. And even then, our mind goes off, but you can bring yourself back. But when you're in life, so often we are taken off by distractions and by anything that goes on. And it really is, it's a personal thing to go back into our breath when we're in that difficult situation and remember that we are in that moment in life. Look at what's around us, look at what's there, and be responsible for being the adult in the present moment in your own life. I mean, that's an important thing. When everything else is going on around you, it is so easy to be caught up in that. But to actually decide to be that adult is a really important decision to make when we're around our families, when we're around our communities, when we're communicating. And it has a huge impact when people see an anchored person who is not caught up in it. So we do have our own responsibility to do that. Thank you. Somebody else. Yeah, I agree. I always love to say when people come with children, we love the sound of children in our services. Much better than no children, isn't it? It's great to stay with the silence because, of course, it gives us that perfect opportunity to be in the present moment. And I'm going to come to you, Ward. Just going to melt that. Ward, thank you, yes. Yeah,
Ward. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Ward did put his hand up. Yeah, thank you.
It's just interesting how timeless wisdom is. Lao Tzu, the quote that you read from 2,500 years ago, those pressures, those energies are still present today. 2017, when I first meeting on City Council, I read that quote, and a couple of months ago or weeks ago, I read that same book in my 8 years, that the same pressures 2,500 years ago and now, how our minds are scattered and how we have to try to stay in the present moment and wait for the mud to settle.
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting that 2,500 years ago, it was more difficult than it is now, because the lawlessness that existed 2,500 years ago meant that we weren't just afraid of something happening in the future. You didn't know when a band of robbers was just going to appear out of nowhere. Even 200 years ago, you know, around this place, there was lawlessness around. And, you know, that wisdom was still there in these situations where these people were living in much more difficult circumstances. Look at you know, the life in Jesus' life. Look at the ever-present fear of death in those moments. And yet these people were able to make this connection with that centering of themselves as well. And we can learn from them and teach our future generations by acting that way.
John.
Thank you, John.
You said it, Nicholas, acting out of fact and not worry. So I wanted to add to that. For me personally, acting out of fact and not out of worry. And I'm going to add fear and the anxiety of the unknown to that as well.
Yeah. Fear and the anxiety of the unknown. Yeah. I love that concept of the still small voice. In Isaiah, when the thunder happens and he stands there and the Lord is about to pass before him, and the Lord was not in the lightning, was not in the thunder, was not in the tempests, but was in the still small voice. And that's a lesson to all of us, that voice is available to each one of us. And it's so difficult to know when to act and when not to act. You know, what should I be doing? But if you're able to connect and hear that promptings of life within you, you get much more reassurance as to when it is the right thing to act and not. Thank you, John. Andy, yeah.
Can you pass that back?
So speaking of voices, there's actually two voices that you hear when you're still. One says, you're nobody, you're nothing, you can't do anything. The other one says, you can do anything you set your mind to. And I don't know if we have any Survivor fans here, but the Survivor finale was this week, and one of the gals who made it almost to the end said at the beginning of the show, the voice that said, you can't do anything, was gigantic and was drowning out the voice that said, you can do whatever you put your mind to. Yeah. And she said by the end of the show, they had flipped, and now the you can do anything voice was much larger than the you're nothing voice. So it's interesting. She went through trials and tribulations on the show to get to that point, but we all struggle with that. And so I would just encourage you in the present moment to listen to the voice that says, you can.
Yes, because he does drown out the other voice, doesn't it, as well? I mean, we think of ourselves as just little people. That nothing we're going to do is, we just think, well, what's the point? I just live in my local community. I'm not, elected representative. I haven't got any power and things like that. And so therefore, the voice that is telling me to speak up or whatever it is to do something, I'm not going to do it because what's the point? I'm just going to, get into trouble or whatever it is. However, we fail to realize that each of us has that authority of that divine that's within us. And what can't be accomplished by humanity can be accomplished by the divine that's within us. And all of us have the opportunity to be able to make that connection and make a difference. And we just don't know the difference that we do make. I always think the fact that, sort of Gandhi's great-grandparents never knew what they were producing. They never knew. They just carried on and suddenly, boom. You never know what effect you're going to have in the world. But by acting out of life, you fulfill the promise that's within us. Yeah, thank you. Yes, Claire.
I wonder if you have any recommendations or knowledge about how to switch the voice faster.
How to switch what?
Switch the voice. So when you hear the doubt,
Yeah.
do you have like a mantra or something that you do that helps you come back to the other voice a little faster?
I think that's such a great question. Yeah. I saw someone in the podcast, someone said, when someone says that's such a great question, what they really mean is I really must think about what the answer is. Give me some time to sort this out. No, but I didn't mean that. I did mean it. It was good. And, personally, I use my breath. I use my breath because, I am, as Heather will tell you, in my head most of the time. And I use my breath, and the first thing I do is use my mind to remind me to get into my breath. And then I just use my breath to slow down and just to stay, to be in my body. We got Susan Potion coming that weekend, and she is a big body person. And, I'm so concerned about her. She's going to make sure we're all in our bodies during that forum thing, And I think, oh my goodness me, But it's to be in our bodies. And I do recommend the breath. To take, it's a very simple thing to do, to take a deep breath. When you find yourself just, spinning out with your mind, you take a deep breath and you get into your body and then you just look out. I do that first and then I look out. And I just see what is there. And I realize that I'm a part of what is there. And that there is a oneness that I am a part of. And I remember myself as being part of that oneness. And remember that in that oneness that I'm a part of, there is a source. There is a fundamental ground of being that is not only sustaining everything I'm looking at, but sustaining me as well. And I make that connection with that oneness. And then I relax into that and realize that that is more powerful than anyone we could think about. And there's more potential there and more rest there and peace. And I feel refreshed by that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I just
Please.
want to add to that. I was just thinking of James Finley saying repetition is not redundancy. And it's like we have to do it so much until it becomes habituated. That's the thing. Like 10 minutes a day or like just when we feel off, and it isn't enough. That's why practice is it, because we have to do it, cultivate the inner stance that offers the least resistance, as he says, to being overtaken by peace and equanimity and joy and love and everything. So that's the thing. We have to practice it until it becomes our habituated state, our way of being. That's the thing. So it is all of that, but it's doing it quite a lot.
Yeah, it is about practice. And that's why we always say here that if you haven't got a meditation practice, I'm going to come to you, take one up. That's where you practice it. That's where I sit and I practice coming back to myself in that moment. And then when I come out enough, it becomes like a muscle memory. When you practice in your meditation practice, when you're in life, you have a muscle memory that you can draw on. And it's there for you. Yeah, so I think practice. So one of the quotes I used said that, didn't it? That it is about practice. Yeah, finally, Louisa. Thank you. Oh, Sandy as well. Did you want to say so? Yes. Louisa, then Sandy, then we'll stop. Yeah.
Hi, Claire. I just want to say it's so hard when you have little kids because you don't feel like you even have a moment to stop for yourself. And I can't remember Susan Aposhian's exact words, but I'll look it up because I wrote it down. But I remember, I'm pretty sure it was her, it wasn't Cynthia Bourgeois, but about literally putting your hands on your chest
Yes.
and saying, I am safe, I am whole. And just, but it really, putting your hands on your heart and just well, because you have to do that for yourself. You don't have time. You don't even have the bandwidth. You have little kids. So just try to, when your head's about to explode and you cannot handle things, just put your both hands on your heart and say, I am safe, I am whole. I can't remember.
It was Susan Aposhian.
It was
yeah,
Susan,
yeah,
and I can't remember her words, but
that
they
was
were
very Susan Aposhian.
it
We
was
spent
very
a whole
Susan.
weekend putting our hands
it
on.
was, but it was so great. And she told her story about the car accident with her daughter, and she was like, I just got to get to the hospital. But just take those moments and just, I'm going to look up her words. They were incredible. But just putting your hands on your heart and saying, I am safe, I am whole, it really just grounds you and brings you back to the present moment, like Nicholas just said. So I know it's hard when you have the little ones and you're on your own. I mean, it feels like I was on my own. Even if you're not on your own, you feel like you're on your own, right? So we're here.
And Susan's going to be here in 2 weekends' time. She's going to be here in the thing. Finally, Sandy, yeah.
No, I just wanted to say one thing I say to myself is be where your feet are.
Be where your feet are.
So I can't be in the future and I can't be in the past. I have to be right here now.
Near the microphone. You
Yes.
can't be in the future. You can't be in the past.
past. Be here now.
Be where your feet are. Thank you, Sandy.
And replace fear with faith.
Sorry?
Replace fear with faith.
Replace fear with faith. Thank you, Sandy. So appreciate that. Thank you for these.
One more.
Oh, Ellen, of course, yes.
I get airtime otherwise, but I've been reading a lot of Thich Nhat Hanh recently, and I use breathing in my morning meditation, but what's been working for me the last little while is breathing in the here, breathing out in the now. And if I say that, if I get very real about it, boy, does it bring me present.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Well, come out, because you're on now again.